In the end, when you have gone through all the cycles of safety and freedom, when you have left and then returned, when you have dared to step out and then sought a temporary shelter, perhaps what remains is only a deep silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of a melody that has played long enough for its echoes to linger in the air. You sit there, without needing to think about what has passed, and without needing to plan what is to come. You simply sit still and realize that, right now, you are still breathing. Your chest rises and falls. Air flows in and out. Your heart beats steadily. Life unfolds without requiring any plan. And you understand that in this simple state, you are touching the very core of freedom. The freedom to simply be yourself, right in this very moment. You may think that freedom means going very far, and safety means having a great deal. But when you look closely, both are only ways for the heart to feel full. Some feel free when walking alone on an empty road where no one knows their name. Others feel free when they are in the arms of someone who protects them without needing to play any role. Both are true. Freedom is not a shape, it is a feeling. In the same way, safety is not only a house with four walls, nor only a stable job. Safety is when you know that, no matter where you are, you can return to yourself without fear. Sometimes, it is a small room where you light a candle and sit down with a book. Sometimes, it is an afternoon in a park, where you lift your head to the sky and feel peace within. Everything you have gone through, with all its storms and stillness, has only been to teach you one thing. You do not need to run far to find safety or freedom. They have always been present, whenever you are quiet enough to notice. Real safety is not found in a job, a house, or a relationship. It lies in your ability to trust yourself. And real freedom is not in breaking everything apart, but in your ability to choose which door to open and when. In this moment, you can allow every question to rest. You do not need to ask if you have been brave enough. You do not need to ask whether you are inside or outside of a cage. You do not need to ask what your next step will be. You only need to know that your breath is still here. Your heart is still beating, and you still have the ability to choose, even if it is the choice to stay silent or the choice to walk on. As the night falls, you can relax your body, close your eyes, and let your thoughts drift away like clouds. You do not need to hold them, nor do you need to chase them. They come and then they go, like everything else in life. And you, in the midst of it all, only need to be present. Perhaps this is the final gift of the journey, realizing that you have never truly been imprisoned, and you have never truly lost your freedom. They were only different forms of the same experience of living. And when you see that clearly, every paradox dissolves. When a story reaches its end, people often expect a clear conclusion, a decisive answer, a formula for living to hold on to. But you must have seen it by now. Life does not work like that. It does not give us final periods. It only places commas. One chapter ends, another begins. One safe space closes, another one opens. And you, who have followed this story from beginning to end, do not need to hold onto any words in your mind. You do not need to memorize a formula, nor do you need to prepare a plan for tomorrow. Because the truth is, tomorrow will be different, and all you need is enough stillness to be present when it comes. Perhaps tomorrow you will still walk the familiar road, sit in the familiar chair, meet the familiar faces, but the difference will be within you. You will know that even in repetition, there is room for a different step. Maybe small, changing your seat, changing the way you greet someone, changing how you look at a scene that yesterday felt ordinary. In those small changes, freedom begins to take root. And perhaps, on a more distant day, you will stand at a larger threshold, deciding to leave a job, a relationship, or a city. In that moment, you will remember that you have stepped out of your comfort zone many times before. You will no longer see that decision as a reckless leap, but only as the next natural step on the journey. The most precious thing is that you do not need to rush. You do not need to immediately become someone else. And you do not need to prove to anyone that you have escaped the cage. You only need to know that the key has always been in your hand. You can open the door at any time. And sometimes, simply knowing you hold the key is enough to make your heart lighter. Perhaps life is like a long piece of music. There are parts that are intense, and parts that are quiet. There are parts that make you tremble in fear, and parts that make you weep with peace. You do not need to understand the entire piece in order to enjoy it. You only need to listen to each note and allow yourself to flow with it. Tonight, as you close your eyes, let this story dissolve like a dream. Do not try to hold it, and do not try to forget it. Let it become a small part of your breath, a gentle breeze, passing by and leaving an echo. Tomorrow, when you wake up, ask yourself one simple question. Today, can I step out just a little more? It does not need to be much. It does not need to be far. Just a little. One small step is enough to redraw the boundary of your safe space, expand it outward, and give you a little more sky to breathe under. And then, with each step like that, you will see that this journey does not truly have an ending. It only stretches on, soft and endless, like a river winding through time. And you, wherever you are, will always have the choice to stay or to walk on. There is no ending, only continuation, only each moment, each breath, each small choice that you are living. And perhaps that is the greatest miracle. Let every thought drift away from you, like leaves floating down a stream. You do not need to cling to them, and you do not need to push them. Simply watch them pass, and know that the river continues to flow. Feel your body now. Your shoulders soften a little. Your breath becomes more even. Your heartbeat settles. Each beat of the heart is like a gentle knock on the door of the present moment, reminding you that you are still here, still alive, still able to choose the way you want to walk. Out there, the world may still be noisy, still full of gilded cages, still holding familiar roads waiting for your return. But right now, you do not need to decide anything at all. You only need to rest. You only need to allow this gentle stillness to surround you, like a home without walls, without a roof, with only the vast sky above. Tomorrow, when you open your eyes, you may still be in the same familiar room, but you will know that the real boundaries do not lie in the four walls, but within you. And with just one slow breath, you can expand them a little more, and then a little more again. Now, let your eyes close and let the soft darkness fall. Hear your breath like a slow melody. Hear the silence like a lullaby, without beginning, without end. You do not need to search for another answer, because in this stillness, you already have everything. Simply sleep, simply breathe, simply be present. And when you wake, the journey will continue. There is a very special moment, one that often comes after you have gone through many circles of change, many times of stepping out and coming back, many times of breaking apart and building a new comfort zone again. It is the moment when you sit still, no longer rushing to prove anything, and realize this entire journey does not lead to a final destination, but brings you back to something simpler, the ability to be fully present in each moment. You look back on the road you have walked, the days of confusion when you left your old job, the sleepless nights when you had no idea what tomorrow would bring, the small but proud moments when you did something you once thought impossible. All of them now feel like waves, some large, some small, but each one washed away a part of your fear. And now, sitting here, you feel a different kind of stillness, a stillness not born from the absence of turbulence, but from no longer being swallowed by it. Many people believe that the goal of stepping out of the comfort zone is to reach a life of absolute freedom, with no barriers and no limits. But when you go far enough, you realize limits have always been there. The difference is not about removing them, but about changing your relationship with them. Instead of seeing them as prison walls, you begin to see them as markers. Limits show you where you are, and at the same time, they show you where you could still go. At this stage, you begin to find calmness inside the paradox, that you are free enough not to be held back, but safe enough not to need to run away. You no longer need a comfort zone to validate yourself, and you no longer need to break it to prove anything. You only need to know when to stay and when to leave, and both are your choices. I once met an old man in a small fishing village by the sea. He had lived there for more than half his life, rowing his boat out each day. I asked him if he ever grew bored, doing the same thing again and again. He smiled and said, "Every day at sea is a different day. The sea is never the same, and neither am I." His words made me think, perhaps freedom is not running everywhere to chase what is new, but learning to see what is new, even in the old. When you are no longer afraid of being stuck, you realize that even within safety, there are doors that open endlessly. And that is the deep stillness this journey is meant to lead you toward. A stillness that does not mean stopping life, but living with a different rhythm, slower, fuller, more awake. You are no longer the one running from the cage, nor the one clinging to it. You are simply the one sitting inside, knowing that when you wish, you can step out. Tonight, as you prepare to sleep, try feeling this. You do not need to shatter every chain to be free. Sometimes, simply knowing that the chain is not truly locking you is enough to make your heart lighter. And in that lightness, your sleep becomes gentler, deeper, as if you are lying in the wide embrace of freedom itself. Perhaps one of the most important discoveries in the journey beyond comfort zones is realizing that safety and freedom are not opposites. They are not two extremes that force you to choose. In truth, they are the two breaths of the same life. When you inhale, you seek safety, a home, a place, arms to rest in. When you exhale, you seek freedom to move, to explore, to face the unknown. A full life requires both. Once, you may have believed that only by breaking safety could you find freedom. But then you realize, freedom cannot last without a foundation to return to. A wanderer without a home may feel free in each step, but his heart still longs for a harbor. On the other hand, someone who clings only to safety without daring to step out may live in stability, but his soul dries up from the lack of new experience. Both extremes are prisons. The art of living lies in balance, knowing when to stop to nourish yourself and when to leave to grow, knowing that the safety you choose is not a chain, but a temporary support, knowing that the freedom you seek is not escape, but the expansion of your inner safe ground. I remember the image of a tightrope walker. He steps across a rope stretched between two buildings. If he only seeks safety, he will never step out. If he only seeks freedom, he will rush forward and fall. What keeps him steady is balance each slow step, moving forward, keeping rhythm, not too fast, not too slow. And the truth is, it is in that fragile moment that he is most alive. You are the same. When you know how to balance between safety and freedom, you no longer fear losing either one. You can choose to stay without feeling trapped. You can choose to leave without feeling like you have abandoned everything. And the paradox is, when you stop making either one absolute, both suddenly become more abundant. You may be in a familiar job, a fixed home, a long relationship. On the surface, it looks like you are staying still. But if inside you remain open to the new, willing to try, willing to learn, then that safety never becomes a chain. It is like a tree, its roots deep in the soil, but its branches reaching toward the sky. On the other hand, you may be constantly changing, moving homes, switching jobs, traveling everywhere. If you change only to run away, you will always feel restless. But if you carry stillness inside, then wherever you go, you will feel at home in your soul. Freedom, then, is no longer breaking away, but carrying safety with you, so that wherever you arrive can become a place of rest. And here is the essence of the journey. You do not need to destroy safety to find freedom, nor sacrifice freedom to keep safety. You only need to learn how to breathe within both, like the ocean, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, but always water, always fluid, always moving. Tonight, before you sleep, you might place your hand on your chest and listen to your heartbeat. It beats with a steady rhythm, but each beat is slightly different. None are exactly the same, yet all flow together into one current. Your life is the same. There are moments of safety, moments of freedom, and when they flow together, you finally feel the fullness of living. There is something you will realize after stepping out of your comfort zone enough times. There is no final promised land where you arrive and everything stops. Every time you step out, the world expands, and at the same time, new limits appear. The comfort zone you have today, no matter how vast, will sooner or later become the old zone of tomorrow. At first, this can be exhausting. You may ask yourself, if things keep going like this, will I ever truly be at peace? But over time, you begin to see that this is not a meaningless loop, but a rhythm of life, like breathing. Inhale, exhale, expand, draw back, move forward, pause to rest, not to end, but to continue. You will see that safety is no longer a location, but an inner state. You do not need walls to feel at peace, because peace now comes from trusting your own ability to adapt. And when you have that, you no longer fear the unknown zones. You are simply curious about them. I remember once speaking with an older man who had been through many twists and turns in life. He said, "When I was young, I thought life was a journey from point A to point B. Later, I learned it is more like climbing many mountains. When you reach one peak, you will see higher ones in the distance. And if you stay on one peak forever, the view will be beautiful, but your vision will stop being new. Every climb is tiring, but each one makes the world feel bigger. Looking back, you realize you have carried much from your old comfort zones, not to return, but to build strength. The experience from past steps out makes you calmer when facing new challenges. You understand that the trembling at the start is not a sign you are wrong, but a sign you are heading in the right direction, the direction of growth. And one day, you will accept that even after leaving your first golden cage far behind, you will still build other nests to rest in. But this time, you know they are only stops, not endings. You know that when the time comes, you will spread your wings again, carrying both peace and longing. The final paradox of this journey is this: the more often you step out, the more you see that there is nowhere you truly have to leave. Because the real boundary is not out there, it is in your own mind. When that boundary shifts, the world naturally opens. No walls need to be broken. No cages need to be smashed. When you understand this, you begin to live more lightly. You stop searching for a state of permanent safety, and instead enjoy each temporary comfort zone as part of the flow. You see that even uncertainty can be a kind of safety, if you know how to stand steady inside it. When you live long enough with the awareness that a comfort zone is only temporary, everything around you takes on a different beauty. You see someone taking their first shaky step out of their own zone, whether it is simply speaking in front of a small group or catching a train to somewhere far, and you smile. You know how that racing heartbeat feels. You know their hands are a little cold, but their heart is warm. And you know that just one step could open a chain of changes lasting a lifetime. For you now, expanding is no longer a battle against fear, but a habit of exploration. You begin to seek out the unfamiliar, not to prove anything to anyone, but to remind yourself that you are still alive. You take a different route home, even if it is longer. You sit down with someone whose perspective is opposite to yours, not to argue, but to hear a different world. You try a skill you once thought was not for you, and each time, your comfort zone stretches just a little further. The interesting thing is, once you are used to this rhythm of expansion, you stop seeing uncertainty as a threat. You see it as a door that could open into a garden or into a dark hallway. But whatever it is, you know you can walk through and find a way to adapt. That is the kind of peace that comes from confidence, not from avoidance. I once met a woman who had gone through a series of major life changes, losing her job, getting divorced, moving to a different country. When I asked her about the most valuable thing she had learned, she did not mention a specific achievement. She said, "I know I will be fine, even when nothing around me is fine." The words sound simple, but they hold an entire history of stepping out again and again until that belief became part of her. Still, there will be times when you want to stay longer in one place. That is not wrong. Everyone needs a pause, a home to rest in, a stretch of time to enjoy what they have just reached. But the difference now is this: you know you are resting, and you do not mistake it for the finish line. It is like a sailor choosing to anchor in a beautiful bay for a few days, yet still keeping the map and knowing when the wind changes so he can set sail again. And here is the most beautiful part of the journey. You begin to realize that you do not need to shatter the old comfort zone to step out. Sometimes you just need to open a small door, look outside, and take one more step. Small but consistent changes will carry you farther than any single dramatic leap. You also learn to carry your peace with you everywhere, no longer dependent on a specific room, a job, a relationship, or a fixed schedule. Peace is now like a small lamp you hold in your hand. Wherever you go, you can light it. And when you carry it, the unknown is never too dark. Before you end today, try asking yourself, how wide is my comfort zone right now? When was the last time I stepped out? Is there a door I still have not opened, simply because I am used to the light inside? These questions do not need immediate answers. Sometimes it is enough to let them sit there, quiet as seeds in the soil. And one day, when the wind changes, they will sprout. And when they do, you will know it is time to take the next step. When you begin living inside a new comfort zone, one that is wider, more flexible, and entirely your own choice, you will notice something unexpected. Your change does not stop with you. It is like tossing a pebble into a lake, sending ripples out across the surface. At first, you think you are changing just to live more honestly, to breathe more easily, but soon the people around you begin to feel it too. It might be a coworker, someone who always saw you repeat the same work every day, now catching you trying a new approach and succeeding. It might be a close friend, once used to seeing you hesitate at big decisions, now watching you take a path few have walked. Or it might simply be a stranger, seeing you smile while standing somewhere completely unfamiliar and quietly wondering, could I do that? You do not need to lecture or try to motivate anyone. In truth, the strongest influence often comes from presence rather than words. When others see you living with a freedom they once thought was far away, they begin to realize it may not be so far for them either. There is something fascinating in human psychology. We are more likely to believe in our own ability when we see someone like us do it first. Not a legendary figure in the news, but a friend who once sat at the same table, a colleague who once shared the same fear, a family member who once stood exactly where we are now. When you break your own limits, you unintentionally loosen the limits in their minds too. But here lies a paradox. Your change can also provoke resistance. Not everyone is ready to welcome the new version of you. Some may feel threatened because your change forces them to look at the comfort zones they are clinging to. They might try to pull you back, not out of malice, but because they want to restore the old balance, where both of you stayed at the same level of comfort. The important thing is to learn how to tell the difference between a reaction born from love and one born from fear. Those who truly care will support you, even if they do not fully understand why. Those ruled by fear will find every reason to keep you still, because they are not ready to watch you move further ahead. And then there will be a moment when you realize this journey was never just for you. Every time you overcome a fear, you are leaving a marker on the path, showing others that this way is passable. Every time you choose truth over familiarity, you are creating a safe space for someone else to do the same. This does not make you a guide in the grand sense. You are still yourself, still with fears, still with days of doubt. but you have become living proof that change is possible. And in a world where so many believe they must stay still to be safe, your existence becomes a gentle reminder. True safety is knowing you can leave at any moment. The influence of your change rarely happens instantly. It is quiet, like a seed carried by the wind, landing on unfamiliar ground, then taking root in silence. You may never know that someone has noticed your steps, until one day they come to you and say, "Seeing you do that, I started to think I could try too." I remember once an old friend, someone I had not spoken to in years, suddenly sent me a message. She told me she had stumbled upon something I had written about, leaving a stable job to pursue a personal project. At first, she was simply surprised. But months later, when she grew tired of her own work environment, the image of me making that decision came back to her. And then, one day, she handed in her resignation and started a new job she had never thought herself brave enough to try. This kind of ripple effect does not always lead to immediate action. Sometimes it is only a small crack in someone's wall. A colleague who is used to seeing you stay silent in meetings might see you speak up and defend your view. He might say nothing in the moment, but the next time he disagrees with the majority, he will remember, "Someone once did that, and everything turned out fine." The truth is, your influence does not depend on the size of what you do, but on the honesty in every action. You do not need to make dramatic changes to inspire others. Sometimes it is the daily consistency that makes people believe change is possible. A friend who sees you exercising every morning, rain or shine, might begin to wonder, if she can keep that up, maybe I can keep something going for myself. However, this ripple effect brings another challenge. You will notice some people trying to cling to your journey as their escape, but they are not yet ready to walk it themselves. They may ask questions, seek advice, yet ultimately return to old habits. In those moments, you must remember that your responsibility is not to drag someone along, but to keep your own flame burning. They will walk when they are ready, not when you want them to. There is a very particular moment I believe everyone who has stepped out of a comfort zone will experience. The moment you look around and see that a few people have begun to change, not because you tried to convince them, but simply because you existed as proof. That feeling is both humbling and profound. You understand that by living true to yourself, you have left an unspoken mark on someone else's world. And here is the paradox. True influence does not come when you try to be a role model for others. It comes when you let go of the need to prove anything and simply focus on living your own choice. It is that freedom, not slogans, not advice, that makes others want to explore and experience for themselves. In the end, you realize that stepping out of a comfort zone is not just a personal story. It is also an invisible gift you give to the world. You may never see all the ripples your pebble creates, but you know one thing for certain. Somewhere, someone will see that ripple and begin to wonder, could I step out too? There is something many people do not realize. When we leave an old comfort zone, we are not stepping into an endless void. Human beings cannot live forever in a state with no foothold. Sooner or later, we will find a way to create a new comfort zone. But here is the difference. This new comfort zone can be wider, more flexible, and most importantly, it is one you choose for yourself. At first, you may not see that. You only know that you are trying more things, meeting more people, seeing places that used to exist only in your imagination. Each new experience is like adding a brick to the foundation of a different home. But this time, the bricks are not placed according to someone else's blueprint, but to the rhythm of your heart and the direction of your gaze. The interesting thing is, the new comfort zone does not need to be perfect for you to feel at ease. It only needs to be real enough for you to feel you are living fully. In the old comfort zone, peace came from familiarity. Everything was pre-programmed. Nothing was unexpected. In the new comfort zone, peace comes from your ability to face and adapt to the unexpected. This is a subtle yet powerful shift. Safety no longer means fixed, but becomes the ability to stay balanced while in motion. Imagine a person who once feared socializing, always avoiding crowds for fear of being judged. After leaving their old comfort zone, at first they feel confused, out of place. But over time, they realize they have met a few new friends, joined a few activities they never dared to before, and have begun to get used to the occasional need to improvise. At this point, their comfort zone is no longer four walls and a fixed schedule. It is a set of skills and confidence that has taken shape. The paradox is this: a new comfort zone is still a cage, but it is a cage for which you hold the key. You open it when you wish, close it when you need, and you know exactly why you choose to stay inside or step outside. This is completely different from the old golden cage, where you stayed only because you did not know how or did not dare to leave. I think that at this stage, you begin to find a different kind of peace. Peace not from having everything under control, but from accepting that there will always be things beyond your control. And surprisingly, that acceptance makes you less afraid. Some call this sustainable freedom, not because you have broken all attachments, but because you know exactly which attachments you have chosen. Like an experienced sailor, he still needs a harbor to anchor his ship, but he chooses the harbor and is ready to leave when the wind changes. This new comfort zone has its own beauty. It encourages you to keep expanding it instead of shrinking it. Every time you try something new and find that you can handle it, its borders widen a little more. And one day, you will realize that you are no longer living inside a comfort zone, but living inside a zone of exploration, where safety and adventure coexist. Living in a comfort zone you have built yourself feels completely different from before. In the old one, peace came from having everything prearranged, no surprises, and you only had to follow what was already familiar. In the new one, peace comes from knowing you can stand steady, even when everything changes. It is like standing on a boat that never anchors, but having learned how to keep your balance no matter how high or low the waves are. You begin to notice that what once frightened you is now just a challenge. Trying an unfamiliar dish is no longer a risk, but an interesting experience. Meeting someone new is no longer social pressure, but an opportunity to hear a story you have never heard. Even failure is no longer the end, but a part of the journey, like the scratches on a handmade object. Not perfect, but making it one of a kind. A new comfort zone also changes the way you see boundaries. Before, a boundary was a wall, tall, thick, separating you from the world. Now, a boundary is more like a low wooden fence. You know where you stand, but you can step over it whenever you choose. This gives you both a place to return to and the ability to go far. I once had a friend who had lived in her new comfort zone for years. She told me that each year, she chose one thing that scared her and tried to experience it at least once. The first year, it was learning to skydive. The second year, it was speaking in front of hundreds of people. The third year, it was traveling alone to a distant country. Each time, her comfort zone expanded, and she realized something fascinating. What was once outside the comfort zone had now become a natural part of her life. The paradox is, as your new comfort zone expands, it will create more moments of unease, but you are no longer afraid of them. You understand that unease is not a sign of danger, but a signal that you are touching something new. It is like stepping into deeper water, where you are not yet familiar, but your body already knows how to swim. However, here is a gentle warning. A new comfort zone can still become a cage if you let it close. If you stop expanding it, if you start fearing the loss of what you have just built, it will slowly become an upgraded version of the old golden cage. The only difference is that it looks more modern, more flexible, but it is still an invisible boundary that keeps you still. So the question to remind yourself is not, am I safe? But, am I still expanding? A comfort zone is only truly new when it is still growing alongside you. Think back to the last time you did something that made your heart beat faster than usual. Not because you were afraid of being hurt, but because you knew you were stepping into the unknown. It might have been a spontaneous trip, an honest conversation, a decision to leave behind something that no longer fits. Those moments are the new bricks in the foundation of the comfort zone you choose. In the end, a new comfort zone is not a fixed destination, but a living space. It can grow, shrink, and change shape with the seasons of your life. The important thing is that you know exactly who holds the key and that you are willing to open the door when the time comes. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, the comfort zone I have today, is it still a place I choose, or has it become a place that keeps me? There comes a point in life when you can no longer keep avoiding it. Not because someone forces you, and not because the outside world suddenly becomes more appealing. It is simply because, inside you, a question begins to echo over and over. If I stay here for another year, will anything really change? At first, that question is tiny, like a single drop of water falling on the surface of a still pond. But every day, it falls again. And soon, you begin to see ripples spreading, touching every corner of your life. You look at your familiar work and see the repetition you once tried to ignore. You look at your relationship and see the empty spaces you had grown used to accepting. You look at your daily habits and realize they are no longer joys, only rhythms to make time pass faster. Now, every excuse you once used to keep yourself here starts to wobble. It is safe here, but safe for what? If each day you are only living as a copy of who you were yesterday. I am not ready yet, but if you wait until you are completely ready, will you ever begin? At least here I know what I have, but if what you have is only exhaustion, is that truly an asset or just a burden? I once heard someone describe this moment as standing on the bank of a wide river. On this side is the familiar land, where you have lived for years, with the same worn paths you could walk, with your eyes closed. On the far side is the unknown, maybe a lush green meadow, maybe a dark forest. You cannot see it all. You cannot be sure, but you know that if you want to cross, you will have to jump into cold water and swim on your own. And here is the hardest part. No one can swim for you. No one can guarantee that the far side will be better than this one. The choice is entirely yours, and that is exactly why it is so terrifying. Your brain, wired to avoid risk, will offer you hundreds of reasons to step back. The water is too deep. The current is strong. What if there is nothing better over there? But at the same time, another part of you, the part still hungry to live fully, will whisper, what if that is exactly where I am meant to be? And the paradox is, both voices are right. The risk is real, and the possibility is real. In this moment, you begin to see an uncomfortable truth. Change never waits for you to be ready. It only comes when you accept that you will never be completely ready. Just like you cannot learn to swim by standing on the shore imagining it, there will always be a moment when you must dive in, let the water surround you, and let your body be afraid while learning to float. And sometimes, the first move is not a grand leap. It is just a small step outside your habits. One morning, instead of picking up your phone, you step out onto the balcony and notice a piece of sky you have never looked at. One afternoon, instead of saying yes to the usual place with the usual people, you choose to go alone somewhere farther away. One evening, instead of playing the familiar lullaby that helps you sleep, you sit quietly in the dark. These small steps do not shatter the cage at once, but they begin to loosen its foundations. Because freedom does not only begin when you are outside. It begins the moment you realize you can choose and start choosing differently, even if only a little. The first steps out of the comfort zone are rarely loud. There are no fireworks, no cheering crowds. Sometimes it is just a slightly unusual feeling in your chest, a blend of restlessness and anticipation. Like standing before a door you have never opened, your hand touches the cold metal of the handle and you realize what lies behind it could be anything. The interesting thing is, when you begin to change, the world around you will react. Some people will be curious, some will worry, and some will be uncomfortable because your change reminds them of the comfort zones they have not yet dared to leave. A few will say, "Why bother? Things are fine here." And if you are not alert, those words can pull you back, making you question whether you are doing something too much. But then, there will be small, yet powerful moments when you see why you must keep going. It might be the first time you walk along a street you never noticed before, realizing the world is wider than you thought. The first time you try something you always feared, and see that the fear was never as big as you imagined. The moment you say no to something that no longer fits, and realize you have lost nothing. In fact, you have gained space for something else. Each step like this is like removing a single link from the invisible chain that has held you for so long. You have not escaped yet, but you begin to feel a gap where you can breathe. And that space, small as it is, makes you not want to go back. However, the first taste of freedom is not always comfortable. It often comes with a sense of being lost. You have left the old map, but do not yet have a new one. There will be days when you miss the old stability, like someone far from home missing the smell of their own kitchen. And this is when the golden cage calls you back, whispering, "Come back. It is still warmer here." The paradox is, this feeling of being lost is the sign you are truly changing. Because if you are wandering, yet still completely comfortable, it means you have not crossed the border of your comfort zone. The confusion, the emptiness, the unease, these are the signs you are in new territory. I once heard a mountaineer say that the scariest moment is not at the base of the mountain, but halfway up. At that point, going down feels far, and going up feels steep. One strong gust of wind, and you will ask yourself, "Should I stop here?" But if you keep taking one step after another, then look back, you will see you have gone farther than you imagined. Leaving the comfort zone is the same. You do not need to know the entire journey ahead. You only need to trust the next step. And sometimes, that step is so small that others will not notice, but inside you, it creates a crack in the old wall. And perhaps, the most important thing you will learn when you begin to act is this: freedom is not a faraway destination. It is a series of moments when you choose what is real over what is familiar, even if that reality is not yet perfect. There is a moment in life that everyone will experience, the moment when everything you once believed to be solid suddenly begins to shake. It does not arrive with a bolt of lightning, nor with a storm. Most often, it begins quietly, like the faint crack of a hairline fracture in a glass. You are living your familiar life, doing your familiar routines, meeting your familiar people, and then one day, a sentence, a glance, or a tiny event makes you flinch. Am I being kept in place? At first, you deny it. You tell yourself, "No, I am fine. Everything is safe. Everything has a reason." But the seed of doubt has been planted. And like any seed, it begins to grow, even if you intentionally try not to water it. Maybe it happens when you realize that for years, you have not done anything new. You have not learned a new skill, not traveled somewhere far, not tried a strange dish. Not because you do not want to, but because you always feel not ready yet. And then the question rises, am I truly not ready? Or have I simply grown used to never stepping out? This moment of realization often comes with a mess of emotions. On one hand, you begin to see the limits you once overlooked. You notice that your stable job is keeping you in a weary loop. You notice that your long-term relationship no longer nourishes your soul, only keeps a habit alive. You notice that your familiar home, warm as it is, has become a frame that keeps you smaller than you could be. But on the other hand, the thought of leaving any of these makes you tremble. This is the power of the golden cage. It makes you want to escape and fear losing it at the same time. You know that outside, there might be something fresher, bigger, but outside also means cold winds, darkness, and no guarantee that anyone will welcome you. Inside, even though it is no longer paradise, you know every corner, every shadow, This moment is like when someone is dreaming a beautiful dream, but begins to realize they are dreaming. Part of them wants to wake up and explore the real world, but another part wants to sink back into the dream, because in there, everything is pleasant and familiar. And here is the deep paradox. To step out, you must accept losing the very thing that makes you feel safe. But that conflicts with the survival instinct that always seeks safety. It is like removing your life jacket in the middle of the ocean, trusting that you can swim to an island you have never seen. Some people, when facing this moment, turn away and keep living as before. They paint over the crack in the glass with layers of polish, a short vacation, a new purchase, a comforting story to tell themselves. But polish never erases the crack. It only hides it until one day, the light hits it again, and you see it clearly. Others begin to rattle the door to see if it will open. They try small things, saying a thought they never dared to say, refusing a request they used to always accept, spending a day somewhere without telling anyone. These acts, small as they are like spreading fractures, signs that the cage is beginning to lose its grip. But to truly break it requires more. It requires a decision that cannot be reversed. And when you stand in front of that decision, you realize the problem was never the cage. It was the invisible thread between the cage and your fear. Picture an unusual morning. You wake up, open your eyes, and instead of getting up as usual, you stay still, looking around your familiar room. The light still spills through the blinds like every day, but today, it no longer feels comforting. Instead, it reveals all the repetition. The wooden desk with its old scratch, the chair you sit in for hours each night, the walls you know so well that there is nothing left to discover. Everything is exactly the same, but different. Different because you now see that it is a box. This kind of recognition is never gentle. It is like hearing a familiar song and suddenly realizing you have heard it thousands of times before. You no longer feel the music, only the repetition. And the worst part is, realizing you have been singing along for far too long. The golden cage will never tell you it is a cage. On the contrary, it will give you everything you need to believe there is nothing better outside. It will give you food, water, shelter, sometimes even little gifts, so you will feel grateful. It will give you perfect reasons to stay. It is dangerous out there. At least here, there is still a place for you. You are used to everything already. Why leave? And then, the paradox becomes clearer than ever. You know, you are not completely happy, but you are also not unhappy enough to break free. That not enough is the strongest chain of all. If you were miserable, you would find a way out. But when you are only slightly dissatisfied, slightly empty, slightly tired, you tell yourself, it is not bad enough to change. And so, year after year, you stay. I once heard a haunting sentence. The enemy of a great life is not tragedy, but a life that is just good enough. Good enough means you can tolerate it. But tolerating is not the same as living fully. Tolerating means letting the days pass without truly living them. Think about the dreams you once had. Maybe it was opening a small cafe by the ocean, learning a musical instrument, traveling to a faraway country, or writing a book. They did not disappear. They are simply lying still in a deep corner, covered in dust by obligations, priorities, and above all, the feeling that it can wait. But the truth is, no one knows if later will ever come. The real moment of awakening is not just realizing you are in a cage, but realizing you have been complicit with it. That each day, each small choice, each time you told yourself, I am fine, was another brick you placed on the wall around you. And when you face that truth, it is both painful and freeing. Painful because you see how you tied yourself down. Freeing because if you built it, you can also tear it down. But breaking the golden cage is not an overnight explosion. It is a series of choices that slowly take you outside, choosing to step into the unknown, choosing to do something without a guarantee, choosing to face the fear of losing what is familiar. And then, one day, you will stand before an open door. Outside, the sky may not be perfect. The wind may be cold. The road may be uneven. But every breath of air will be real, unfiltered, undiluted, not designed to keep you still. And you will realize that what you have been seeking all along is not a safer place, but a truer one. Maybe tonight, when you close your eyes, you will ask yourself, am I sleeping in my own home, or in a dream someone carefully crafted so that I would never want to leave? There is an old story I once heard from a friend who works in wildlife conservation. They told me about a young elephant that was chained by the leg from the time it was small. The chain was light, fixed to a wooden stake, but strong enough to keep it from walking far. At first, it pulled, it tugged, it tried to break free every single day. But after months of failure, it stopped trying. When it grew up, it was strong enough to rip out both the stake and the chain. Yet it never left its spot, because it believed the chain was still holding it back. In many ways, we are just like that elephant. Our chains are not made of metal, but of habits, rules, relationships, jobs, and safe zones we have grown used to. And the most frightening part is this: often, no one even needs to hold us anymore. We stand still, on our own. Think about a person who has worked at the same company for 15 years. He knows every procedure, every face, every corner of the office. Day after day, he does the same familiar tasks, says the same familiar lines, walks the same road home. He could change jobs, challenge himself, or start something new. But the moment he thinks about the uncertainty of a beginning, his chest tightens. He stays. Not because he loves the work, but because it feels safe. And each day, that safety hardens into a layer of cement poured around his feet. The irony is, we often praise stability as an ideal to strive for, but rarely ask, is this stability true freedom, or just a form of prison dressed up nicely? A golden cage is still a cage, even if it has flowers, music, and good food inside. Some people stay in relationships they know have lost their connection, simply because, at least I am not alone. The words "not alone" sound warm, but hidden behind them is a fear of facing the emptiness, the uncertainty. We choose what is familiar, even when that familiarity wears us down, simply because it is less frightening than the unknown. These soft chains are more dangerous than iron ones because they do not make us fight back. On the contrary, they make us grateful for being kept safe. And the longer we stay in those safe arms, the weaker our ability to leave becomes, not because we cannot, but because we have forgotten that we ever could. This leads to an uncomfortable question. How many choices in our lives are really just the result of our fear of leaving safety? When we say, "I choose to stay," or "I choose to keep things as they are," how much of that is genuine desire, and how much is just a reflex to avoid uncertainty? I am not saying that safety is bad. People need shelter. We need quiet spaces to recover. But the problem is when we start treating safety as an absolute value, even if it demands that we abandon our desire to explore and give up other possibilities within ourselves. At that point, safety is no longer a companion. It becomes a gatekeeper. Perhaps the greatest danger of soft chains is that they make us forget we are wearing them. A person chained to a wall will think about removing the chain, but a person sitting in a beautiful room, with windows opening to a peaceful view, will rarely notice that the door has never led outside. So the final question I want to leave you with tonight is this: the safety you have, is it a foundation for you to reach further, or is it the reason you stay? If you think that manipulation only happens when someone tells a blatant lie, threatens you, or forces you, that is the very first step that makes you easier to manipulate. Because dark psychology does not need to confront you directly. It only needs to find a quiet path into your mind and plant a tiny seed so that you will grow it yourself. The mechanism of this game is simple, yet so subtle that most people overlook it. Repetition plus emotion. When a message appears often enough, in a certain emotional context, the brain will start recording it as part of your personal truth. No persuasive reasoning is required. No evidence needed. Just the right repetition at the right time. And if the emotion attached to it is safety, trust, or pleasure, the brain will almost never question it. Think back to a lullaby you heard when you were a child. You may not remember the words, but the melody is still there, like a thin thread connecting you to a feeling of peace. If someone pairs that melody with a new message, you will accept it easily, because your brain already linked that sound with calmness long ago. This is called emotional anchoring. Psychologists also talk about the mere exposure effect, the idea that the more you see something, the more you will start to like it, or at least lower your guard. The important thing is, this feeling has nothing to do with the actual quality of the thing itself. It is based purely on familiarity. That is why major brands are willing to spend millions of dollars just to have their logo and colors appear repeatedly everywhere, even when they are not selling you anything right now. But there is a deeper layer, and it is the darkest part of gentle psychology: emotional dependency. Once you repeatedly experience comfort from a certain source, whether it is a person, a group, or a platform, you will start forming the habit of turning to it every time your emotions feel unsteady. At that point, control no longer lies in reason. It lies in the feeling you fear losing. The danger is that all these mechanisms operate in the background, like a soundtrack you know too well to notice. They do not need to break your defenses. They only need to make you believe there is nothing worth defending against. They do not force you to do anything. They simply make you believe you want to. And here is the greatest paradox. The very moment you feel the most free, because you are allowed to choose to be in a safe place, to be surrounded by familiar things, may be the moment your mind is being guided the most. Because freedom in feeling is not always freedom in truth. So next time you feel completely relaxed, completely at home with something, try pausing for a moment. Ask quietly in your mind, is this feeling really mine? Or is it a gift someone wrapped long ago and placed in my hands? Picture an ordinary morning. Your alarm goes off, but it is not a jarring beep. It is a soft tune you picked last month. You open your phone and a notification from social media appears at the very top. A friend has just liked the photo you posted yesterday. A warm feeling rushes in. You scroll to see a few more images, carefully chosen to match your interests. And before you realize it, you have spent the first 30 minutes of your day inside a gentle world, but one arranged by someone else. This is no accident. Technology platforms have spent decades studying how to trigger dopamine, the neurotransmitter that creates feelings of satisfaction in small doses. Not enough to make you full, but enough to make you always want a little more. It is like adding just a touch of sugar to coffee, not to make it sweet, but to make you take another sip. This is the technique of maintaining an attention loop, a kind of emotional anchoring that is constantly refreshed. And it is not only on screens. Think of the last time you visited your favorite coffee shop. The staff remembered your name, your drink, even asked, "The usual latte today?" It feels warm, does it not? But that very familiarity, if repeated enough, creates a default behavior. You choose that shop, even when there might be a better option, simply because your brain long ago linked this place equals comfort. And here is where the paradox emerges. We believe we choose because we like, but often, like is just the mark left by repeated past experiences, replayed enough to become instinct. We can no longer tell which desires are truly ours and which are programmed reflexes. These mechanisms become dangerous when they touch deeper layers: beliefs, opinions, and personal identity. If a message is tied to the feeling of belonging to a community, it becomes almost immune to criticism. People will gladly overlook logic, evidence, and even clear warning signs, as long as those signs do not break the sense of safety within the group they see as their spiritual family. I once heard a story. A woman lived her entire life in a small town. She believed it was the best place to live because everyone was kind and gentle. That belief came from childhood memories, afternoons, running across open fields, neighbors helping each other. But when the town began to change, she clung to the old image, refusing to believe in the new problems, because admitting the truth meant breaking the emotional anchor that had held for years. This brings us to an uncomfortable question. Are we truly living by our own will, or are we walking along roads paved with pleasant feelings? Is safety always good, or is it sometimes just a sedative to keep us from asking questions? The mechanism of gentle yet dangerous psychology lies in the fact that it never forces you. It only offers the choices you already want to choose. And once you want them, you will walk in yourself, lock the door yourself, and confidently tell yourself you are at home. But if one day you discover that the walls around you were not built by you, but quietly constructed by someone else long ago, what will you do? Will you break them down? Or will you touch the wall, feel its familiar warmth, and tell yourself, maybe it is fine to stay? Have you ever noticed that most of the things that make us sleep peacefully are not loud shocks, but the gentlest touches? Not a scream, but a whisper. Not a hand that grips tightly, but a warm touch on the shoulder. Not a prison wall, but the soft blanket you wrap around yourself every night. It sounds harmless, even comforting. But that is exactly what makes it dangerous. Because we humans are quick to be on guard when danger is obvious, yet we often lower every defense when that danger wears the disguise of safety and gentleness. I want you to imagine a very ordinary evening. You are sitting in your familiar room, warm yellow light spilling across the table, with the sound of raindrops tapping outside the window. In that moment, everything feels in place. Everything feels calm. There is nothing to worry about, and you do not realize that right now, a part of you is being quietly reprogrammed. Not with commands, not with threats, but with a gentle repetition, skillfully woven into this feeling of safety. There is a term in psychology called emotional anchoring. It is when the feeling you have about something becomes tightly connected to a specific signal, a sound, a scent, a voice. Once that connection is strong enough, the moment the signal appears, the feeling comes alive almost automatically, and you can barely control it. And here is the paradox. When someone wants to manipulate you in a subtle way, they will not attach that signal to fear, because fear keeps you alert. They will attach it to comfort, to reassurance, to familiarity. They will make you believe that they are your safe place, and then, little by little, what you accept and what you believe to be natural will begin to shift without you noticing. Think about the commercials you saw when you were a child. Maybe it was a jingle that played over and over between your favorite cartoons. You did not care about the product, but that tune stayed in your memory. Years later, when you saw it on a store shelf, you felt a strange sense of familiarity. You did not know why, but your brain had stored it long ago, during moments when your guard was down. That is the power of something gentle, yet dangerous. A kind of dark psychology that is not loud or aggressive, but persistent. It does not come to destroy your world in one blow, but to quietly shift the foundation stones beneath it, until the whole house leans toward the direction someone else desires. And the strange thing is, once you start noticing it, you see it everywhere. In the way someone always chooses the nicest moment to ask you for a favor. In the way a phone app sends a notification right at the hour you usually feel bored. In the way a familiar voice becomes the default answer to your worries. The question is, are you truly safe? Or are you simply sleeping inside a dream someone else built for you? There is a truth few people want to admit. Human beings are not only vulnerable when they are afraid. They are most easily led when they feel loved and protected. That sounds like the opposite of everything we have been told. We grow up believing that love and safety are our fortress walls. But sometimes, that very wall becomes an open, unlocked door, letting someone step in and rearrange our world to fit their plans. You can see this in long-term relationships. Control does not always come from obvious orders. Often, it comes from the softest, most reasonable words. I just want you to stay home tonight because I worry about you. At first, it sounds warm, but if that sentence is repeated often enough, a part of you will begin to believe that going out is unsafe. And then, you start shrinking your world not because you were forced, but because you agreed. In psychology, there is a phenomenon called the shrinking comfort zone. At first, it is wide and free, but each time you agree to a new limit, the boundaries pull in. The frightening part is that when the shrinking happens slowly, you hardly notice. It is like walking into a room filled with the scent of flowers at first. It is intense and beautiful. But stay too long, and you stop smelling it. You do not realize you are inside a space that has been shaped until the door is locked. This does not only happen in love, it happens at work, when a company turns perks into tools for keeping you bound. A beautiful office, free coffee, flexible hours, all of it makes you feel at home. But then, you accept unpaid overtime. You let go of certain rights, simply because you are grateful for the comfort. Slowly, you tie your sense of financial safety and emotional stability to a system that can change the rules anytime it wishes. And here is the paradox. When we stay inside a comfort zone for too long, what we fear most is no longer being controlled, but having to leave that comfort, even if it has turned into chains. The soft thing becomes the shackle. The protector becomes the barrier. If you take a step back and look closely, you will see the world manipulates not only through fear, but also through the things that lull you to sleep. Instead of pushing you into battle, it soothes you into putting down your sword. Instead of raising a wall of steel, it weaves you a soft blanket. Tonight, when you lie down, ask yourself, how many of the things you call choices are really just reflexes planted in you through pleasant moments? How many feelings of safety you hold are actually invisible threads keeping you in place? You may not find the answer right away, and perhaps the very silence around you right now is also part of that game.